Do you find yourself doodling in the margins of your notes during lecture or find your attention wandering off? Well, it's time now to unleash the power of the doodle and see what adding images to your notes can do for you. Hi, I'm Alison Innes. I've been a teaching assistant here at Brock for almost 10 years now. And during that time, I've learned a thing or two about note-taking. And today I want to introduce to you visual note-taking, a way of organizing information that goes beyond words. Do your eyes glaze over when you're faced with a page of text? Do you struggle to capture your ideas in written words? Do you find it so hard to pay attention in lecture? Or conversely, find yourself feverishly trying to write down every word the professor says? Incorporating images into your notes might be just the thing you need. Adding visual elements to your notes is a proven way to boost their power. Illustrating concepts, terms, and relationships can have a significant effect on your ability to remember and learn when compared to just writing alone. Visual note-taking, also called sketchnoting or infodoodling, can do a number of things for you. It can aid in information comprehension and recall. It can help you increase your insights into the material that you're reading or listening to. It can help you see the bigger picture of how ideas connect or engage more deeply with ideas. It can increase your focus and your ability to concentrate. And of course, it can help you participate in problem solving. Even if you don't consider yourself a visual person, visual note-taking is a really powerful skill to have in your toolbox. And today, I'm going to show you some really easy ways that you can add visual elements to your notes. You're probably thinking right now, this sounds great, but I'm not an artist. Sketchnoting, infodoodling, whatever you want to call it, is not about the artwork. You're not trying to recreate the Mona Lisa. You're simply trying to convey information in a way that will help you remember it. So grab your favorite pen and paper or your stylus and tablet, and let's get started. Suni Brown, the author of The Doodle Revolution, suggests that we start with a basic alphabet of shapes, just like we have an alphabet of letters we use for writing. So this alphabet of shapes includes 6 lines and then 6 shapes. And these are all pretty simple to draw. So you can take a few minutes now and sketch them out in different sizes and kind of see how they can be mixed together. Then think about some everyday objects, and I've offered some suggestions here, or you can look around for something in your immediate environment and think about how that object can be drawn using those 6 lines and 6 shapes. I've drawn my coffee cup that sits on my desk with an oval, 2 curved lines, and 2 straight lines, and that's all it really takes. So take some time now to work through a couple of examples and get yourself comfortable with that visual alphabet. Then when you're ready, we'll resume. All right, so now you're good with objects, but what about people? People are so hard to draw, but you don't have to draw people. You just have to draw stick figures. And it can be the classic stick figure from your childhood, just some straight lines and a circle for the head. You can get a little bit fancier if you want. You could do a star person with a circle for the head. You can use an oval body shape or a square body shape. And you can add emotion and expression using 2 dots for eyes and a line for the mouth. And inspiration for that can be found right in your smartphone. Once you're comfortable with a basic stick figure shape that you like and that you're comfortable with, you can think about things that you can add to that stick figure to make it more distinct. So here are 3 gods from Greek mythology, since that's an area that I have been a TA in and have used sketchnoting. And you can see how I have taken that simple shape and made it into 3 different characters. So I added a crown and a thunderbolt for Zeus, and Apollo, the god of music, gets some music, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, gets some hearts. So it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. So think about your own discipline, your own lectures that you're attending, and what types of figures you might need to represent, and think about some ways that you can do that. Now, people can be in all kinds of poses, and some poses can seem really complicated, but it all breaks down to some basic lines and shapes, that basic visual alphabet we had. And if you get stuck, what does a person golfing really look like? Then you can Google that and sketch it out quickly or draw it out quickly. So you can see here that I have done exactly that to figure out what does a person golfing look like. But again, remember always, it is not about the quote-unquote artistic value of what you're creating. It's about the information that you are encapsulating. So the photograph on the right and my simplified version on the left are both conveying the same idea, a person golfing. So try out some of these other activities. You can do an internet search for your own reference images if you need to. And then when you're comfortable with that, we are going to get a little bit more abstract. So you can Google objects, you can doodle people. What about concepts? A lot of time in lecture, you'll probably be dealing with some pretty vague concepts. The way to get around that with doodling is to think about symbols that can represent a larger concept. Here are a few that I have used. So a leaf to represent the environment, green growing things, a flower for beauty, a light bulb for an idea. It's what is going to make that association for you. So choose things that you'll remember what that symbol means. You can also choose more abstract symbols or letters to represent particular concepts. You can add some color elements and have some different colored things as well, as long as you understand what that meaning is and you have some consistency so you don't get confused. So here are a few more abstract concepts that you can think about how you would communicate these with doodling. So give yourself a few minutes to work through some of these, and then we will continue on to think about how we put all of these images together to create a sketch note or visual note. All right, so when we're writing, we start in the top left-hand corner, we work left to right, top to bottom. The glorious thing about visual note-taking is you can work in whatever direction makes sense to you. You're not confined by the lines on the page. And in fact, if you can, use blank paper so that you're not even thinking about the lines on the page. So it might make most sense to you to record things left to right or top to bottom or even on a diagonal, and that's fine. You can use a sort of grid and work your way around in a circle, or choose a path that meanders across the page or zigzags back and forth across the page as you record your ideas. Boxes and shapes can also contain ideas. So you could have two columns or silos to contain two distinct but related ideas. You could use a comic strip type layout for something that's very sequential, or a series of separate boxes in a mosaic layout for a whole bunch of ideas that you need separated out. And I like this outline layout on the far right, which suggests a big box for kind of the main ideas, and then a series of smaller ideas, or smaller boxes showing the ideas that support that main idea. Sometimes ideas are really interconnected and not as straightforward linear concepts. So there's a couple of different ways you can tackle those. You could use popcorn or cloud shapes. You could do spokes and wheels kind of idea with a radial layout. Sometimes something like a flow chart or a hierarchy tree will give you the layout that you need to show how things are related. And for comparisons and contrasting things, a Venn diagram, overlapping circles or other shapes also works really well. So those are some different ways that you can think about laying out your notes rather than just the straightforward left to right. Now I'm going to move on and show you some examples of a couple of these layouts and talk about what has been done in each of them to give you a few more ideas of how you can incorporate it into your own notes. So first step is a sketch note that I did as part of a larger handout for a social media presentation. So I have a whole bunch of ideas that I'm talking about. These ideas are all really closely interconnected, but I want to talk about them separately. So instead of drawing lines between them, which would create a really cluttered looking layout, I took the time to separate them out and just left lots of blank space that people could add their own notes and thoughts to. And you can see, again, I've done a little stick figure as a person scratching their head as they're thinking. And this sketch note, I added a little bit of color, and I did this one digitally using an app called Procreate. I really like this sketch note by Julia Forsyth, one of our Brock staff members who works in CPI. She's a great sketch note artist. She did this sketch note about a talk she attended called The Flexible Classroom. And instead of laying it out in some kind of linear or abstract way, she has created a classroom here. She's drawn the classroom and then she's put all of the symbols and ideas that this person is talking about inside the classroom. So there's a staircase showing levels. There's a bowl of cereal where she's talking about culture and strategy. And all of these different ideas are inside one picture. You'll also notice here that there's a really clear title and there's a name of the person speaking, along with where and when the talk happened. And Julia's also included her Twitter handle because she has shared this publicly and she wants people to know who she is and how to reach her. You'll notice that people who do share their sketch notes publicly will often include some kind of copyright information and some way to contact them or to credit them. But you will, in your notes, always want to include a title and a date so that you have something to refer back to. So here's a sketch note that I did when I was TAing for Classics 1P95, Myth of the Greek and Roman Gods. And this is about a specific poem that we study in that class called the Homeric Hymn to Demeter. And it's a really complex hymn. There's a lot of things that happen in the hymn. There's a lot of questions about why certain things happen and different explanations for what can be going on. And there's a number of characters with really complex interrelationships. So I've drawn the characters and shown who kind of relates to who. And then I've taken the main character, the goddess Demeter, and drawn a series of green arrows that show how she progresses throughout the hymn, the things that happen to her, the things that she does, and then made some notes off of there of some of the complex ideas that come up. So you can see that I have used color and stick figures to convey the information. There were a couple of important ideas that didn't really fit in the overall layout, so I put those in little boxes kind of in that bottom left-hand corner. This sketch note looks kind of pretty because I didn't do it live. This was something that I took my time doing. I sketched it out in pencil and then I did it in ink and I added a little bit of color. You can do that if you want, but you don't need to, right? So you can just doodle things quickly in class if that's what you want to do, and you can add some color later while you're studying or make it look prettier later if you want, which is actually a good way of reviewing too. Here's a slightly different sketch note that I also did about conference live tweeting, and I've done more of a silo type layout here. I have two columns, what organizers can do, what participants can do. This one has a lot more text than it does image because I was dealing with kind of concepts that were a little bit more abstract. But I wanted to show you this one, partly because I included a lot of color, which is something that I like to do. So if you're a color-oriented person, that is an option that you can really get into with sketchnoting. But I've included here at the bottom my sources, because these were not my own ideas that I was bringing together. These were ideas that somebody else had already talked about. So there were 3 different articles that I was getting ideas from, and I shared it on Twitter, so I included their Twitter tags as well. Again, it's all about academic integrity and giving credit for ideas and the people who originate those ideas. All right, so this is great, you're probably saying. You've done these wonderful sketch notes. I can kind of see how it works, but I don't take notes on paper. I use my laptop, and that's perfectly fine. You can use your laptop and you can take really good notes on your laptop, and you can still incorporate visual note-taking. So there are a number of apps out there for tablets and smartphones and laptops that will let you either draw directly into them or import images from elsewhere. I will highlight Microsoft OneNote because as a Brock student, you have access to the Microsoft Office collection of apps. And OneNote will let you put text boxes on the page and move them around and do a bit more of that creative stuff that you can't do in Word, or is much more complicated or frustrating to do in Word. So you could import images that you find, and I would refer you as well to our discussion about citing images and that kind of thing as well, and using images responsibly. And you can incorporate color and that kind of thing as well. All right, so that brings us pretty much to the end of our doodle power. You know how to do figures, you know how to do objects, you know those 6 basic lines and 6 basic shapes. You can think about adding things like boxes, lines and dividers, arrows, various symbols, letters, icons. There's lots of things that you can incorporate into your notes to help you organize them, to draw connections, to think about things in a slightly different way, and to avoid simply trying to transcribe what a professor or lecturer is saying, and to incorporate those ideas and make them your own and help you remember them. So you are ready now to go forth and unleash the power of the doodle.